first step in learning a piece of music begins with learning the notes, learning your lines, and that involves fingering, right hand and left hand, and thoughtful fingering that will allow you to be able to make the best musical interpretation of the piece. Once you've learned your lines, once you've learned your notes, the next step is to interpret the piece. Like an actor interprets the lines of a play, the musician interprets the meaning of the notes. And this lesson, we're going to examine a piece of music written by Francisco Tárrega, a composer that we place in the Romantic period. He was born in 1852 and he died in 1909. What were his influences and what was his manner of composition? This will be one of the parts we will want to consider when we're interpreting a piece of music that he wrote. And second, what do we see evidenced in the piece of music that tells us what he expects us to bring and breathe life into that piece of music? And so we're going to take a look at a piece called Lágrima. Lágrima means a teardrop. And we're going to ask ourselves, first off, why did he call it a teardrop? What is that meaning? And we'll think about it, and we will then look at the music and see if the music can tell us more than the title. Reading a little bit about Tárrega's early childhood, we can find some information in Emilio Pujol's biography on Tárrega. We're told that as a child he was rather precocious in terms of his interest in guitar, that he was mesmerized by the gypsies, the gitano, and he sometimes found himself wandering away with them, inquiring about their music and playing the guitar. We suppose flamenco guitar. But as he got older and he went to university to study, he was also known as a pianist, a fine pianist, and he had composers who he greatly admired. One of those composers was named Frédéric Chopin, who spent some time in Spain and was highly regarded. The piece that we're going to take a look at, I believe, was influenced by Chopin. Not directly, but because Tárrega was very, very influenced by this music as a pianist. And he brought that to the composition of this piece. So let's take a look at the very beginning of the piece and how it's constructed. The piece is divided into two sections, and its overall structure is ABA. The first section has 4 sharps, and it is in the key of E major. The second section has only 1 sharp, and it is in the key of E minor. So we can ask ourselves, a teardrop, what does that first part of this piece convey? Let's listen to it. And imagine it not being played on guitar. Imagine it being played on piano. Okay, in this first section, we hear this kind of back and forth between, and you can imagine that one note, that pedal tone, being struck just as keeping a rhythmic element in terms of the piece itself. The melody is very simple. Now, in this first part, all the notes are pretty much, in terms of the melody, are played on the first string. Tárrega was a composer, but he was also a guitarist. And he knew one of the characteristics he most admired about Chopin was his use of the pedal. Now, we don't have pedals in the 19th century and early 20th century. I know today we can see guitarists that have pedals for electric guitar. But at this time, the way to achieve that kind of effect was what we might describe as a campanella effect. So instead of hearing that melody go on a single string or across the strings in step, he's created at the very top of that line notes in the way he's fingered it that go from the first string to the third string to the second string. And then he moves the finger up and allows this note to ring over. The whole idea is to make these notes ring over. And then here. So the fingering that Tárrega uses in this piece is important to observe. If you're trying to make the music sound characteristic of the wishes of the composer, the very first step is to know why he wrote those fingerings in the way he did. If you come up with a better way, at least make sure that it is a fingering that achieves his goal in terms of effect. Again, the beginning of this piece is repeated, and it's in E major. Now, if we play every one of those notes the same, we just bring out the melody, have we interpreted the piece? No. We have to think of what this piece might mean. And being that it's in a major key, and being that it is somehow very peaceful and reflective, we must think that this is a simple remembrance. Let's put that in our mind. Yes? A simple remembrance. Music making is a little like storytelling. I'm going to take a risk here and share with you a remembrance. Years ago, on television, there was a commercial about the importance of being careful about the environment. We became much more aware that the Great Lakes were being polluted heavily. And to drive this point, to hit the emotions of the viewer, they showed an Indian chief, a very famous face. And he's looking, and at first you just see this figure, noble and one with nature. And then as you see what has taken place in the landscape, a single tear drops from his face. It is such a powerful emotional experience. It's not outpouring of tears, but just a single teardrop. And yet it conveys remembrance and a deep sense of sorrow. Now when we transition to the next section, which is in E minor, it has a big forceful chord, and that chord is E minor. And it should start in stark contrast to what we just did. And now suddenly, that line should sound as if you couldn't contain the emotions. It is one of the most powerful emotional statements in Tárrega's music, and in particular in this piece. Then afterwards, there is an echo. Now you have to choose what those voices represent. Are there angels? that's all going to color how you decide to orchestrate your piece. Okay, briefly. We know Tárrega loved his Taurus guitar, and one of the things he treasured about that instrument was the immense amount of different colors he could get. And Pujol talks about how Tárrega is looking at different places to play on the instrument to create different timbre, different instrumentation. So in the beginning of this, of timbre, of timing, and of emphasis. So even though you got that scale, it doesn't mean that it has to be played the same way both times. I'll try to demonstrate. I'm going to do just the ending part again. That the B section is expressing a sense of longing, a sense of loss, a sense of anguish. And at the very end, tragedy. And out of that tragedy comes